What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the End Zone Report. As always, I will be your host, Chris, and this, of course, is the show where we tackle the NFL. I got another awesome episode for y'all this week. We'll jump into the Week 10 storylines and injuries heading into Week 11. Then we'll get into the hero and villain of the week for Week 10. Then we'll get into a really awesome Week 11 game slate with some not so awesome matchups. I'll go over those. Those are kind of tricky this week, but there are some really awesome potential shootout worthy games this week. I'm very excited. And then we'll end the show like we always do with either a bet or lineup in Show Me the Money, where we place a $5-10 bet or a small lineup on DraftKings in an attempt to get shown the money. Last week, it did not go so well. Came out with a big fat zero, so we're shooting for the skies this week on our lineup on DraftKings. Couple reminders before we dive into today's episode. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com/TheEndZoneReport. You can also listen to the audio version on Spotify. Go ahead and hit that subscribe or follow button as well. It helps out the show a lot, and I do appreciate all the support so far in the first year of the End Zone Report. It's been a awesome year so far. Some awesome moments, some not so awesome moments, but we're going to take the good and the bad together, and we're going to finish off the season strong and look forward to 2026. You can also follow the Instagram, X, or Facebook pages. That's where I post a lot of the artwork from the episodes, along with breaking news, injuries, and everything else going around the NFL. So with that, let's jump into what's up with the NFL from Week 10. We've got some more injuries coming out of Week 10 heading into Week 11. We also have a couple of updates on some other news. Starting things off at the tight end position, Dalton Kincaid, Buffalo Bills tight end. Really the only target for Josh Allen there in Buffalo. He suffered a hamstring injury. It's looking like he will not start in Week 11, so that'll bring up Dawson Knox in his place. For all you fantasy managers out there, probably go get Knox. It should be quite a crazy game there in Buffalo. Switching over to the wide receiver position, Zay Jones of the Arizona Cardinals did tear his Achilles. He was placed on IR, but most likely he will be out for the rest of the season. Davante Adams comes on the injury report, superstar wide receiver of the Rams. He is dealing with an oblique injury. We're going to have to monitor that one closely because that's looking like a really good game with the Seattle Seahawks. But that is a huge weapon for Matthew Stafford. Now, if Adams is out, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to bench Stafford. That probably just means that more targets will go to either Kyren Williams or who else is there? Puka Nacua, maybe Jonathan Willington will get some targets there. But it's looking like Puka or Kyren if Davante Adams does sit out this week. I'm hoping he does not because he has been great. And the Rams could definitely use him against their division opponent, Seahawks. Tight end position, Rondé Gatson, the second of the Chargers superstar tight end that really came out a couple of weeks ago. He is dealing with a knee injury, but it looks like he is good to go to start this week. So Herbert will get his superstar tight end this week. Quarterbacks, Jackson Dart suffered a concussion and left the Week 10 matchup early. He has been ruled out for the Week 11 matchup. And Jameis Winston, if you did not see my post yesterday, he will get the start in Week 11 against the Packers, I believe is who they're playing. Back to the wide receiver position, Garrett Wilson has already been ruled out for Week 11 with a knee injury, and he has been placed on injured reserve shortly before recording the episode today, so he will be out at least the next 4 games. Really nowhere else to throw to in New York. It's looking like Mason Taylor and some other washed up wide receivers there. So it's going to be a lot of Breece Hall and a lot of Mason Taylor most likely. Bam Knight, running back of the Arizona Cardinals, is dealing with an ankle injury, so we will monitor that one closely. Looks like DeMarcado will get the start anyways with the Bam Knight poor start, and then we'll monitor Trey Benson. He could be back next week as well. Looking on defense, Jonathan Grenard of the Minnesota Vikings suffered a shoulder injury this past week, so we'll monitor that one against their matchup against the Bears. And then Darius Slay of the Pittsburgh Steelers suffered a concussion and left the game early. We'll monitor him as well. Probably the biggest one of the week is Travis Hunter underwent season-ending surgery. He, of course, is the Swiss Army knife for the Jacksonville Jaguars on both offense and defense. So he will miss the rest of the season. It looks like it's an LCL repairment, so likely going to be out for the next 4 to 6 months. But he is projected to be a full go for the beginning of the 2026 season. So that leaves possibly Brian Thomas Jr. We'll see if he starts this week. Newly acquired Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington, Brenton Strange could be coming back this week from injured reserve as well. But that also leaves a couple of running backs there for Trevor Lawrence. So really hurting on the wide receiver room for Jacksonville. So we'll see how they do. The last bit that I have on the list, and then I'll double check some last minute injuries before we head on to our next segment today. But Joe Burrow, my boy Joe Burrow, quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals, was back at practice this week. Looks like he is eyeing a week 13 start, but it's more than likely going to be a week 14 start against Buffalo, where we will see him back on the field with Mr. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So Joe Burrow, we are only a few weeks away from my sweet, sweet boy coming back on the field. I know Joe Flacco is killing it, and all you fantasy managers out there are like, do we really need Joe Burrow back in there? I guess we will see with the record where they stand, because Joe Flacco is killing it right now. He is throwing the ball 50-plus times a game. Jamar Chase is getting targeted like 15 to 20 times. T. Higgins, another 10 or 12 targets every game. Chase Brown has finally been finding his own with the offense, with Joe Flacco leading it. So we will see if they actually do need Joe Burrow. If there is a chance that they could squeak into the playoffs, they definitely will start Joe Burrow. But if it's out of the question of making the playoffs, maybe they just sit him for the rest of the year, get him ready for 2026, and move on with their lives. So we will see. But Joe Burrow is practicing this week and potentially next week. They did open the 21-day window for them to activate him. So technically, he's still on the IR, but he is practicing. Let's look through a couple of last-minute injuries here. I did see a Brock Purdy news. Looks like he is potentially going to be starting this week. We'll keep monitoring that one. Ricky Pearsall sticking with the 49ers. Looks like he will make his return on Sunday in Week 11 against the Cardinals. So that is really good for whether it's Mac Jones or Brock Purdy. Looks like Isaiah Pacheco did not practice today, so it's possible that he will be missing this week. That would leave Kareem Hunt and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and a few other non-relevant running backs in that room. Basically, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes running his butt off against that Denver defense and throwing it a bunch of times as well. Looks like Sam Laporta, tight end of the Detroit Lions, has been dealing with a back injury, and he did not practice today, so we'll monitor that one, of course. If he does not play, I think that would leave, who do they got there? I think they got Wright still, so he would obviously get the start in his stead. I'm not seeing any other big news heading into the week. So we're going to move on to these storylines from Week 10. So I've got 5 more storylines for you all coming out of Week 10 heading into Week 11. Number 1, it's got to be that Dolphins game. Dolphins upsetting the Buffalo Bills 30-13. The Bills just got squashed by Miami. All 13 of their points didn't come until the fourth quarter. Looking at the scoreboard here, in the first quarter, Miami was up by a touchdown. Then by the second half, they were up another 9 points. The quarter 3 was pretty tight there at 0-0. And then that's when the shootout started between Buffalo and Miami. But Miami ended up scoring 2 more touchdowns in that fourth quarter, making it the 30-13. This is a game that everybody predicted Buffalo to just squash Miami. And those are the games that Miami obviously wins. They are sitting at 3-7, and that will drop Buffalo down to 6-3, which is very surprising because I think they have lost to the Patriots on prime time. They've lost now to Miami. They've lost. Who was the other team that they lost? I am drawing a blank here. Let me look this up. Atlanta. It was Atlanta on prime time as well. So not a good track record for the Bills. They did end up defeating the Chiefs. So that is something on Josh Allen's tool belt. But this was just not a day for Josh Allen. Looking at some player stats, Tua ended up with 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 173 passing yards on 15 completions. This was the Achane show, though. Achane with 22 carries for 174 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and then 6 catches for 51 yards. Monster day for Achane. Jalen Waddle has been a very, very important piece of this offense and a very reliable fantasy player if you have him on your team. He went 5 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown. So just a wild, wild game for the Dolphins. Josh Allen still, 28 completions for 306 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw an interception in here, and he did get some movement on the ground with 4 carries and another 31 yards. James Cook was pretty much held in check here at 13 carries and 53 rushing yards, and then he did catch all 5 passes for another 24 yards. They just didn't use James Cook. I mean, he only had 13 carries. He should have had an upward of 20 plus, 25 plus with the way this game was going. This offense needs to start utilizing James Cook more because Josh Allen has nobody to throw it to. I've mentioned it numerous times on the show. I mean, he's looking at Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, and then Kincaid when he's healthy. So Buffalo needs a number 1 wide receiver. Like, that is what's holding them back from the AFC Championship, from the Super Bowl, is they don't have their Jamar Chase, their Justin Jefferson, their Amon-Ra St. Brown, their Brock Bowers. I mean, Dalton Kincaid has really been the only decent target for Allen, but he's been dealing with injuries all year, and that's about it. Keon Coleman had 3 catches for 46 yards. He did get a touchdown. And then Shakir with 7 catches, 58 yards. Curtis Samuel with 1 catch for 21 yards. Shavers, 1 catch for 24 yards. And that's pretty much it. I mean, he's got 5 wide receivers here, 4 wide receivers that he was throwing to, and a hodgepodge of tight ends that he's circling through. Like, just Josh Allen doing it on his own. If they would have won more of these games, he would be the front runner for MVP again. But with a 6-3 record, I think he's sitting like 4th or 5th in odds for MVP this year. So just not a really good stretch of games here for Buffalo. And kudos to Miami for, basically winning this for this coach. Mike McDaniel, another one that I've talked about constantly on the show about, finally getting let go for Miami, is still there. Miami has come out and said, no, we will keep Mike McDaniel for the rest of the year. They did get rid of their GM, so maybe this was kind of a lighting fire under their asses to get a win for letting go of their GM and doing it for Mike McDaniel and saving his life, or his job, excuse me, maybe his life, depending on if you're a Miami fan. Maybe you wanted his head on a silver platter, just like, Bengals fans do with Zach Taylor. Buffalo probably wants Sean McDermott's head. So this is a really good win for Miami. They absolutely needed it. Now, sitting at 3-7, this was more of a statement win rather than like we need to basically win out to go to the playoffs. I still think Miami is just out of playoff contention at this point. We're heading into week 11 and they're 3-7. When with the division how it is, with Buffalo and New England just lighting the world on fire right now, and the Jets kind of being who the Jets are right now as well, it's going to be tough for Miami to sneak into the playoffs. They would basically have to win out. But this game was pretty much just a statement game against a big division rival who has been a Super Bowl contender since Josh Allen's 2nd or 3rd year going into the league. So this was a huge win for Miami fans. Pat yourselves in the back. This, unfortunately, might be the biggest and best win of the year. You might sneak a couple of wins going down the road, but this is probably the peak of the 2025 season for Miami Dolphins, unfortunately. The next storyline is a pretty big one. It's one that we've predicted on the show a couple of times. Brian Daboll, head coach of the New York Giants, was fired after their Week 10 loss. I mean, I wasn't the biggest Brian Daboll fan. I think he's a great offensive coordinator. Obviously, kind of going back to the Josh Allen talk, he basically rebuilt Josh Allen from the ground up and made him into what he is. So I think Daboll will be fine. I think he'll get an OC job somewhere around the league. Probably not a head coaching job for the time being, just because of this track record with the Giants. I think I read somewhere, now I need to vet this for sure, but it seems like he had the worst record as a head coach in Giants history, is what I'm hearing from Giants fan bases and other shows that have Giants fans on there. Brian Daboll was just kind of left with what he was given. You know, he lost Malik Neighbors. They lost Cam Scatterbo. Jackson Dart isn't playing this week because he's been dealing with concussions ever since he started. I think he's been checked out for 4 concussions since he's been the QB1. And they just don't have any other pieces going around. I mean, they got Jameis Winston throwing to Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton. I mean, Theo Johnson's been dropping passes left and right, and he has been dealing with injuries as well. You got Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary in the backfield. Russell Wilson, the backup Jameis Winston. And Russell Wilson is toast. Like, he is not going to be with this team next year. It's more than likely Jameis Winston is not going to be with this team either. As long as Jackson Dart stays healthy, this is his team. They seem very impressed with him and invested in him. So the Giants are kind of in this lull period here. I believe Mike Kafka will be the interim head coach. He was the OC previously to Daboll. He is now the interim head coach. So this team will obviously be looking for a head coach in the offseason, as well as protection for Dart and probably some weapons to go along with Malik Neighbors. So Giants saying farewell to Brian Daboll after Week 10. I believe he was with the Giants for 3.5 seasons. So could have been a better run, but he was kind of dealing with the hand that he was dealt with. Now, I think he's going to feel a lot better. It's got to be stressful coaching a Giants team the way that this current state is. So I think he can take a nice breath of fresh air, go find an OC job with maybe a Super Bowl contending team next year, or maybe he does end up, interviewing for some head coachings, because there will be some head coaching spots in this offseason, not just the Giants. So we will see what the future holds for Brian Daboll, and we will see how Mike Kafka does as interim for the rest of the 2025 season. The third storyline, kind of on the same note as Devon Achane's performance this week, Jonathan Taylor, and this is how I wrote it as the headline, Jonathan Taylor takes Berlin. Like, his stats were freaking nuts this week. Let me pull those stats up because he just went ballistic in Berlin on Sunday morning. Let me pull them up here. And that was a pretty crazy game. I was very much enjoying the Berlin game this week. Some of these international games have not been the most exciting, but seeing the Colts, and specifically Jonathan Taylor, because I really, really like Jonathan Taylor, they absolutely performed their butts off. They looked like a Super Bowl team. Daniel Jones looked great. Jonathan Taylor is making a statement to be a non-QB MVP candidate, or even possibly a winner. It's tough because it seems like Drake May has basically got that top spot locked right now. Matthew Stafford coming up behind him. And then you have Jonathan Taylor, I think, is in third, with Josh Allen up there, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. Like, it's tough. It's basically a quarterback award, and Jonathan Taylor is going to have to keep doing what he's doing and maybe even a little bit more to be crowned MVP this year. I hope he does become MVP this year. I really like it when we kind of get a break from the QB award and give it to, like, Adrian Peterson got it. So, and I think I read somewhere that they did some comparisons between Adrian Peterson's year that he won the MVP and this year with Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor's stats are far better than Adrian Peterson's were, and he's like projected way more. Now I understand that there's, 18 weeks now in there, but to compare him to the Adrian Peterson year, and people and analysts, experts are saying that he's outperforming that year that Adrian Peterson won MVP. So I would really, really love to see Jonathan Taylor win this, but it's tough because this is a quarterback award. But looking at his stats for the Berlin game specifically, now depending on your league scoring systems, he ended up scoring 48.6 fantasy points. He had 32 rush attempts for 244 rushing yards. He scored 3 times on the ground, and then he caught all 3 of his passes for another 42 yards. That is freaking insane stat line against Atlanta in Berlin. So bravo to Jonathan Taylor for just taking Berlin by storm on prime time early in the morning on Sunday against Atlanta Falcons. We will circle back to Jonathan Taylor in another segment later on, but he is the big headline for sure this week as making a statement to become MVP of the 2025 season. The next storyline is kind of a bummer. We have the primetime bust. 3 primetime games. Now, if you want to include the Berlin game as a primetime game, which it technically is because that was the only game on at the time, that game was actually pretty decent. It was pretty entertaining for the most part. The Colts ended up winning 31-25 in essentially a shootout at one point. But the primetime games I'm talking about, one of them is unfortunately my Broncos. Thursday night, Denver Broncos against the division rival Las Vegas Raiders. This is another one similar to the Buffalo game where Broncos were projected to just smoke the Raiders, but they barely won. They won 10-7. It was basically 7-7 for most of this game. I think the field goal ended up coming in the third quarter, and then the fourth quarter was just zilch, nada. So pretty weak game there in the prime time. Bo Nix, he went 16 completions for 150 passing yards. He did have the 1 touchdown. He did throw 2 interceptions, unfortunately, and then he had 5 carries for -2 yards. So it was just a really, really good defensive game by the Raiders, which going into this, we pretty much thought this was going to be a big defense battle because these two are heavy division rivals. But still, looking at these stats lines, it's just horrible for the Broncos. J.K. Dobbins, I know he got injured, but he had 18 carries for 77 yards. I mean, that's not terrible. 1 catch for 7 yards, so not too bad. But Troy Franklin was the leading receiver for this team, 5 catches for 40 yards. He got the touchdown. And then Courtland Sutton was only targeted 4 times, only caught 3 of them for a measly 24 yards. I mean, Pat Bryant had more. I mean, it was 1 catch, but it was 43 yards. And then Evan Ingram has been pretty much irrelevant this entire year. He won't be with the team next year, I'm pretty sure. But, I mean, the Raiders aren't any better. I mean, there's a chance that the Raiders could have won this game, but they just fell short. I mean, Geno Smith, 16 completions for 143 yards, 1 interception. He had 3 carries for positive 7 yards. I mean, I guess that's something to be happy. But then even Ashton Jeanty, I mean, he had 19 carries for 60 yards. He did get the touchdown, thank God, because I have him in fantasy. But then he had 5 targets. He only caught 3 of them for a measly 3 yards. So it was pretty mediocre on the Raiders offense. Looks like Tyler Lockett was the leading receiver here with Jacoby Myers headed to Jacksonville. He had 5 catches for 44 yards. Trey Tucker, he had 2 catches for 28. Thornton had 1 catch for 4 yards. And Jack Bech, the rookie, had 1 target, but he didn't bring it in. Brock Bowers was even held in check. He had only 1 catch for 31 yards. So if you stocked Brock Bowers this week or last week, you were pretty much toast at the tight end position. So yeah, this was pretty much a defensive battle. Carlson missed his 1 field goal, made 1 extra point. Lutz, not any better. He had 2 field goals. He only made 1 of them. And then he had the 1 extra point. So this is a pretty mediocre game. And I want to say it gets better, but it doesn't, because the exact same score happened on Monday night with the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Green Bay Packers. This was really egregious. Like, it was 0-0 for the first half. Like, it was slog fest for sure. Then Philly ends up getting a field goal in the third quarter, and then they both score touchdowns in the fourth. giving Philly the lead at 10-7. But yeah, this game was just horrendous, identical for sure. And then Sunday night, tad bit better depending on which fan of the you are of the team. Chargers end up winning 25-10, but this was pretty much domination by the Chargers throughout the entire game. They had 12 points coming in to the second half. Pittsburgh only had 3 points at that time. Yeah, and they ended up 25-10. This is just a horrendous week of primetime games, aside from the Berlin game, because that was actually a really entertaining game to watch. So just a bust week of primetime games, which sucks because that's the only game on. All eyes are on that game, and it's just unfortunate you have to sit through a 10-7 slugfest in prime time. It's just miserable. And then the last one I want to bring up is another crazy score scenario, and that was the Houston game. Houston comes back in the fourth quarter. They were pretty much toast going into the fourth quarter. I mean, they had 10 points going into the fourth. Jacksonville was up 29, and they gave up 26 points. That being Jacksonville, gave up 26 points in the fourth quarter, didn't score a single point. So the final score ended up being 36-29, and thank God that happened because I took Houston to win that game, as you probably heard on the podcast episode leading up to it. This was just a really, really terrible game for the Houston Texans at the very beginning. And then something ignited in them, and they scored 26 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. Just freaking nuts. Glad to be, if you're probably happy to be a Houston Texans fan, but you're probably also frustrated because similar to me being a Broncos fan, for some reason, Bo Nix comes alive in the fourth quarter. I always joke about how on the Denver sidelines, there is this little glass box, and Sean Payton is just pacing up and down the sidelines with his little hammer, waiting for the clock to tick down to zeros in the third quarter. And then as soon as the fourth quarter starts, he breaks the glass, hits the button, and it activates Bo Nix into this Superman mode. It's just crazy to see that another team is suffering the way my Broncos do in the fourth quarter. But bravo to the Houston Texans for having a huge comeback win in the fourth quarter against Jacksonville. So that is your Week 10 storylines. We do not have the Chase-O-Meter this week because the Bengals were on bye. So we will return to the Chase-O-Meter next week for Week 11 on the show. So with that, we're going to head into the fantasy corner for this week's hero and this week's villain. I probably already spoiled this week's hero of the week, but it is Jonathan Taylor, running back of the Indianapolis Colts. I'll run through his stats real quick. 48.6 fantasy points, depending on your league scoring. He had 32 rush attempts for 244 rushing yards. He held in all three of his catches for another 42 yards and then scored 3 touchdowns on the ground. So your Week 10 hero of the week is Jonathan Taylor, running back of the Indianapolis Colts. Your villain of the week, unfortunately, is A.J. Brown, wide receiver of the Philadelphia Eagles. I feel like we've had A.J. Brown on here at least one other time. I'd have to go back into the previous episodes, but I think he is a multiple villain of the week, unfortunately. Again, depending on your league scoring, he had 3.3 fantasy points. He had 2 catches off of 3 targets for only 13 receiving yards and a big whopping 0 touchdowns in Week 10. So, A.J. Brown, villain of the week. Jonathan Taylor, hero of the week for Week 10. That'll do it for today's Fantasy Corner. We will return next week for the Week 11 hero and villain of the week. Let's head over to a really awesome, but somewhat not so awesome, Week 11 game slate. So last week, I went 10-4 in picks for Week 10. So not too bad of a week in the Week 10 slate. Looking ahead at the bye weeks for Week 11, we only have 2 teams, the New Orleans Saints and the Indianapolis Colts. So if you are a Colts fan or a Saints fan, you can sit back, watch some football, and not scream at the TV. That means for your fantasy teams, no Jonathan Taylor, unfortunately. No Alvin Kamara. If you did have to start him week to week, no Chris Olave, no Tyler Shuck, no Tyler Warren, no Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman, Daniel Jones. So you'll have to pivot this week for week 11, but you will get those guys next week. So, kicking things off for week 11, Thursday Night Football, which is tonight as we record this episode. New York Jets head over to New England to face Drake May and the Patriots. Drake May has been balling out this year, and they are massive, massive favorites in this game. They are 12.5-point favorites in this game against the Jets. The Jets, of course, have basically unloaded their defense. Justin Fields, I think his prop line right now is like over under 129 passing yards in this game. So New England is set up for success here to just dominate their division rival in the Jets. The over under for this game is 43.5, which means they're giving the Jets maybe 10 points in this game, 15 points, something like that. So it's looking pretty gnarly for the Jets right now. I don't see, unless the Drake May starts taking a step back, throwing some picks or fumbling the ball, it's not looking good for the Jets in this game. Ramondre Stevenson might not play in this game, so you're going to get the rookie Trayvon Henderson with the workload once again for the Patriots. Maybe Jennings kind of relieves him a little bit there, but it's looking like Henderson will be the workhorse here in this game against a really depleted and not so great Jet defense. So Stephon Diggs, he's been really good, so you probably want to start him against this defense. With Kayshon Boutte out, it's looking like Matt Collins could be a potential, sneaky sleeper in this game as a really good target. Hunter Henry has been reliable for Drake May so far this year, so it's looking like all Patriots in this game. So we are picking the Patriots, obviously, with the 12.5 favor odds there. Sunday morning, we have the last international game of the 2025 season. The Washington Commanders and the Miami Dolphins head to Madrid, Spain, which I am so jealous. I miss Madrid so much. It's a beautiful city. It's going to look great, and I'm sure they're going to have a blast there in Madrid. Looking like Marcus Mariota will start once again with a very depleted wide receiver room. Terry McLaurin, again, has been ruled out. So that leaves Deebo Samuel as the number one. Zach Ertz will probably be the number one target in this game. And the running back room is kind of a hodgepodge mess with Chris Rodriguez, Bill, and McNichols. So not a whole lot of excitement on the Commanders' side. Marcus Mariota is probably going to get a lot of rushing yards. So if you need a really sneaky quarterback move this week in your fantasy teams, Marcus Mariota could be against a, not so banged up Miami defense as we saw last week against Buffalo, but maybe they take a step back and open up the field for Marcus Mariota. Dolphins side, looks like they are favored by 2.5 points. Over under is 47.5. So, I mean, again, if you're in a pinch for quarterbacks with bye weeks or injuries, Tua could be a streamer. With Jalen Waddle has been the number one target for him, and he's been really, really awesome for the NFL and for fantasy. So definitely, I think Jalen Waddle is a must start this week. Devon Achane is always a must start no matter what. So this is looking like maybe Miami's game to lose. We'll see if they can go back-to-back wins here in Washington. I am taking the Miami Dolphins to take this win overseas and bring back a back-to-back win for McDaniel. Heading into the Sunday afternoon slate, we got the Carolina Panthers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta is favored by 3.5, 42.5 over under. I think Drake London is a little banged up, but he should be playing. He's a must start after the couple weeks that he has been having. Darnell Mooney's pretty much irrelevant, so it's going to be Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, who has been getting a really nice puff piece from head coach Morris. So if you're in a pinch for running back because maybe you're the Jonathan Taylor or Alvin Kamara owner in your fantasy league, maybe you want to maybe Tyler Algier's out there on the wire, fire him up into your starting lineup because he seems to be the favorite when it comes to within the 10 or within the 5 for touchdowns. They haven't really been using Bijan in the red zone like that. On the Panthers side, Bryce Young has shown really good arm strength and growth throughout this year. The Panthers have been a really sneaky, surprising team overall this year. The defense has gotten a lot better. Rico Dowdle has taken the rushing game by storm. Ted McMillan, the rookie, has kind of had ups and downs, but he's been getting some targets from Bryce Young. I am taking the Atlanta Falcons. I know I've had a really bad track record with picking the Falcons, but I'm going to take the Falcons at home over the Panthers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers take on Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, coming off of that gut-wrenching loss to Miami. Buffalo is favored by 5.5. The over-under is 48 points. This could be a shootout. This could be a fun game between Baker and Josh Allen. Baker obviously has Emeka Egbuka, the rookie sensation that has been really taking advantage of the Mike Evans and Chris Godwin injuries. Looks like Bucky Irving will be out at least until next week, so Rachaad White and Sean Tucker will be the running backs here. On the Buffalo side, I've already touched on them already. Not really much targets for Allen. It's going to be probably a lot of him rushing or hopefully handing off to James Cook. I am taking Buffalo to bounce back here against their loss against Miami. It's in Buffalo. It looks like there could be a snow game, so maybe not as much throwing, but potentially a lot of running in here from Josh Allen and James Cook. So if you're a James Cook fantasy manager, you could be scarfing up all the points this week in this game. So I am taking the Buffalo Bills to bounce back from their loss last week. The Los Angeles Chargers take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. LA is favored by 3 points. The over-under is 43.5. I'm taking the Chargers in this one. Again, the Chargers have been kind of up and down this year. They've lost some games that they definitely should have won, and they've kind of surprised us with some of their wins. Jacksonville is hurt and wide receiver, so I trust the Justin Herbert more than I do Lawrence. I think the defenses will probably be eliminated in this game, so it could be a potential shootout or just a stomping by Justin Herbert, who has been just slinging the ball like crazy this year. He's been a top 5 quarterback, if you ask me, for most of the year. So I'm taking the Chargers to win this on the road against the Jaguars. The Chicago Bears taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota is favored by 3. The over-under is 48.5. I know J.J. McCarthy has been a hot topic lately at quarterback. They got obliterated by maybe not obliterated, but it was not a great game for the Vikings last week against Baltimore. That was a game that I was super excited for, and it ended up being Baltimore's game pretty much the whole time. This could be a potential shootout with the division rivals. Caleb Williams has been really good this year. Looks like they've got some wide receiver injuries going. Rome Odunze, DJ Moore. DJ Moore might not even play in this game, so that would leave Zacchaeus. I think Luther Burden is healthy, so they're going to need Rome Odunze and Colston Loveland because it looks like Cole Kmet is still banged up. DeAndre Swift should be taking over the role there, but they do have Kyle Monangai still to back him up. So the Bears are dealing with some injuries. Vikings have a few injuries of their own on defense, but if J.J. McCarthy can get some momentum going, if he can stay healthy, he's got one of the best wide receivers in the league, Justin Jefferson. He's got a really good number 2 in Jordan Addison. Adam Thielen has been really irrelevant since coming back to Minnesota, which I don't understand. And then T.J. Hockenson has pretty much been eliminated from the offensive plays. So I don't think Hawkinson's going to be with this team next year. They're going to have to move on from him and find some other solution at tight end. Aaron Jones has been banged up, but he should be playing this week. So I'm going to go with Minnesota this week. It's going to be a tight game. Hopefully it's going to be a fun one. I really like these NFC North division games. They're really good rivals. They're usually pretty entertaining. And the fact that it's in Minnesota is really a benefit to Minnesota because that stadium gets loud, and it's a superpower that the Vikings like to suck in and use that momentum to take down their opponent. So we're going to go with Minnesota this week against the Bears. I believe this is my matchup of the week. Let me check the docs here. 2 seconds. Nope, that is not my game. It was potentially my game of the week, but there's another one coming up that I'm very, very much excited for. Green Bay Packers take on the New York Giants. Packers are favored by a touchdown on the road. The over-under is a measly 43.5. I am taking Green Bay in this one. I know Jordan Love hasn't been looking the greatest. They definitely have a wide receiver issue there. Matthew Golden, the rookie that they took in the first round, hasn't really been involved. Romeo Doubs has been banged up a lot of the year and not really a superstar wide receiver. Tucker Kraft, losing him for the rest of the season is a huge bummer. So you have Musgrave there at tight end. Josh Jacobs is really the only exciting piece on this offense. And this defense taking down Jameis Winston and the Giants is probably going to be what wins them this game. It's going to be all defense here, not I don't know. We'll see how the offense shapes up under Jordan Love, but this could be a win benefit of the Packers. So I am taking the Packers in this one. With Jackson Dart not playing, I would have considered the Giants in here, but with Jameis Winston starting this game, the Packers defense they're going to get some interceptions off of him. Jameis Winston, you know the story of Mr. Jameis. He could probably go 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, but he's going to throw 3 picks. It's that he's that kind of quarterback. So he's good for fantasy, but for winning games, he's going to throw some picks in this game. So if you're looking for a easy piece of your parlay this week, take the over on the Jameis Winston interceptions because he is going to throw interceptions for sure against this Packer defense. So we are taking the Packers in week 11. The Cincinnati Bengals take on division rival Pittsburgh Steelers. This is Joe Flacco against Aaron Rodgers. Once again, we have the Old Man Bowl headed into week 11. Pittsburgh is favored by 5.5 at home. The over-under is 48.5, but I would have guessed 50 here because I think we're gonna get a shootout with how these defenses have been going this year. Joe Flacco could probably throw 400 yards. 150 of those are probably gonna go to Chase. I mean, Chase has been averaging like 50 to 20 targets a game. Flacco is throwing the ball 50 times a game. T. Higgins is going to be really important here. Chase Brown's probably going to get in the end zone. This could potentially be a huge division shootout because these defenses, especially the Cincinnati Bengals, they're like almost dead last next to Dallas this year. And Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he should be cooking against this defense. Hopefully he gets Metcalf going. Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, they could each end up in the end zone on this one. So I think this is going to be all offense. The defenses are probably going to be eliminated in this game. I am taking the Steelers in this game, though, because they are at home. I thought about the Bengals, but if this was in Cincinnati, I probably would have taken the Bengals, but with their defense being much, much, much worse than the Pittsburgh defense, I am going to go with Pittsburgh in this game, but I think this will be a shootout for sure. The Houston Texans take on the Tennessee Titans. Houston is favored by 6.5. The fact that this isn't more means that potentially Stroud might not be playing. Let's take a peek to see what the latest is on Stroud. Because last I read, he was still in protocol for a concussion. Let's see if it's Davis Mills this week. Yes. So he has been ruled out. So that is probably why this is only a 37.5 game. So we will get Davis Mills once again against the Tennessee Titans. Measly 37.5. But Houston is still favored by almost a touchdown. I am taking Houston with Stroud out. It doesn't change my mind because Houston's defense is far superior to Tennessee's. So I'm still gonna take Houston on the road against Cam Ward. Cam Ward hasn't shown me enough to have any little bit of confidence in him, even against Davis Mills. So I'm going Houston Texans in this game. San Francisco 49ers take on division rival Arizona Cardinals, led by Jacoby Brissett once more. Kyler Murray has been placed on injured reserve, if you did not know that. Marvin Harrison will also be out in this game, so Michael Wilson will probably be the number one wide receiver, but Trey McBride will be the number one target for sure. It's looking like DeMarcado will be the lead back in this game. San Francisco is favored by 3. The over-under is 48.5. Fire up your Christian McCaffrey shares, everyone, because I think McCaffrey is going to have a huge, huge game this week. I know the Cardinals have had a decent defense this year, and it is a division opponent, but with Brock Purdy back, we'll see how he handles it. And with Ricky Pearsall back, it should open up this offense a little bit more. And I think Christian McCaffrey is going to feed in this game. I am taking the Niners. I don't have enough faith in Brissett, and now with Marvin Harrison ruled out, I'm sticking with McCaffrey. It's looking like Brock Purdy will be back. Ricky Pearsall will definitely be back. So that offense is pretty much back to full strength as soon as Brock Purdy gets 100%. Now, I know there's a lot of debates going around about Mac Jones versus Brock Purdy. They invested in Brock Purdy. He is the QB1, so he will be the face of this franchise, at least for the rest of the year into next year. But with the weapons around him, with George Kittle, McCaffrey, now Ricky Pearsall back with Jauan Jennings, I know the defense is really banged up right now with injuries, but I have San Francisco winning this game over the Cardinals. Now, this is my matchup of the week. Seattle Seahawks take on the Los Angeles Rams in LA. The Rams are favored by 3. The over-under is 48.5. This is the game I've been waiting for. Sam Darnold versus Matthew Stafford. This is going to be great. You got JSN, Puka Nacua. Now you have Rashid Shaheed and hopefully Devontae Adams. You got Kyren Williams against the weird combination of Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. These two defenses have been really, really good for most of the year. Rams probably a little bit better than the Seahawks defense. But this is my game of the week. I'm super, super excited for this Stafford-Darnold matchup. I am taking the Rams. I think they're the better team overall. Stafford has been just lighting the league up. He is a must-start in your fantasy leagues if you have him. Hopefully, Devontae plays. If for some reason Devontae is still out, I am going to take the Rams still because I like Puka Nacua. I like Kyren Williams. I like Stafford. I trust that defense. So even if Devontae Adams doesn't play in this game, I'm taking the Rams to win this. But this is going to be a fun one. This is my matchup of the week. Super excited for Seahawks and Rams. The Baltimore Ravens take on the Cleveland Browns. This is like all division games this week, except for a couple of them. Baltimore is favored by 7.5. The over-under is 39.5 measly points because of the Browns offense and the Browns offense pretty much. I know the Ravens defense hasn't been greatest this year, but if you're looking for a defense to stream, definitely stream it against Dylan Gabriel. Lamar Jackson, full strength. Derrick Henry should be pounding on the ground. It's going to be interesting with this Browns defense, though. Myles Garrett has been a monster with sacks. But I'm taking Baltimore. It's a no-brainer for me. This is Baltimore bounce back tour on the road against Cleveland. Moving on, Kansas City Chiefs against my boys, the Denver Broncos in Denver. Thank God this game is in Denver. KC is, of course, favored by 3.5 points. The over-under is 44.5. I hope Bo Nix pulls his head out of his ass in this one because they are going to need it against this Spagnuolo defense. But you have Patrick Mahomes going against arguably the number one defense in the league right now. So I'm going to be sweating bullets during this game because this is going to be stressful because I am taking Denver Broncos. I've taken the Broncos every week this year. I plan on taking them the entire rest of the season, no matter what. They are my team. Bo Nix for life. He is my real MVP. So I'm taking the Broncos, but I'm going to be sweating bullets during this game. This is going to be a stressful one. I know I saw a video before recording where I can't remember which show it was, and I wish I could plug them here, but it was such a perfect prediction of this game. Pay attention to the penalties that are getting called in this game. I don't think the NFL, and I agree, and I wish I would have known his name. I agree, the guy that's in that video, that the NFL is going to try their hardest, especially the refs, to have the Chiefs win this game. Now, if the Chiefs lose this game, they're probably not going to make the playoffs. That'll drop them down to 5-5. They have no shot at the division at that point. It's going to have to come to like winning out and a miracle rest of the season if they lose this game against Denver. This would kick Denver up to 9-2, solidifying their division stake at number 1. So this is a huge, huge season-altering game for the Chiefs. If they do end up winning this game, that'll get that momentum going, and they'll probably have a spot in the playoffs. But like I said, pay attention to the penalties in this call. I think the guy in that video predicted that it would be a 12-3 penalties ratio, meaning Chiefs would only get 3 penalties. The Broncos will get 12 to favor the Chiefs. So I think a lot of eyes are going to be on this game, especially with those fan theories going around about the refs favoring the Chiefs because they have some kind of blood oath or whatever theory rabbit hole you want to go down, that they have some kind of supernatural connection to each other to make sure the Chiefs get to the Super Bowl every year. Sunday Night Football, we've got the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles. Philly is favored by 2.5. The over-under is 46.5. I'm going with Detroit on the road in this game. With the comments made by A.J. Brown, I think there's a lot of, what's the word I want to use, disgruntled, disconnect on the Philadelphia offense. I saw an interview with Jalen Hurts before coming onto the show today where he made a comment about A.J. Brown's comments in the locker room on him not getting targets. Basically, Jalen Hurts says that is not the mindset we should be doing. This is a group. This is a team. It shouldn't matter individually about stats, about targets. Basically throwing A.J. Brown under the bus about saying that. A.J. Brown even came out and said, if I'm on your fantasy team, bench me or even drop me because they are not using me. So I think there's a lot of tension and disconnect on the Philadelphia offense. So I'm taking Detroit on the road to take down Jalen Hurts. Jared Goff, I like Jared Goff. I think they got that ground and pound to a T with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Saquon Barkley has been starting to get some momentum going on this year, but it's been really, really slow for him since his historic run last year with this team. I'm going to say Brown, Jameson Williams. We'll see if Sam Laporta plays. That'll be a huge disadvantage for Jared Goff if Laporta does not play, but they've played games and won games without Laporta before, so I think they'll manage it. But I'm taking Detroit against Philly here. I was not impressed with what I saw from Philly last week at only scoring 10 points. So I'm going all Detroit this week against Philly. Then our final matchup of the week, Monday Night Football. Dallas Cowboys head to Las Vegas to take on Geno Smith and the Raiders. Dallas is favored by 3.5. This is the biggest over-under of the week, 50.5, because Dallas's defense is just terrible. They are last in the league in pretty much almost every metric. Geno Smith should be able to throw on this team, keep this game interesting. It's going to be tough, though, because all he really has to throw to is Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers, I mean, they got rid of Jacoby Myers, so that wide receiver room is led by Trey Tucker, Tyler Lockett, Jack Bech. That's it. Really, all Geno Smith has is Genty, the rookie, and Brock Bowers. Like, that is all Geno Smith has. And, of course, on the defense, they really only have Max Crosby. So I'm taking Dallas in this game. I think Dak Prescott is going to light this Raiders team up. I think he's going to have a monster week for Dallas. George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, Javonte Williams. I think they're all going to have massive stats this week against this Raiders defense. So I'm taking Dallas on the road to take down Geno Smith and the Raiders. It's either going to be a really exciting game or a really, really terrible game. But I'm leaning more towards the excitement game because of the potential with the offenses here. So I'm taking the Dallas to wrap up this week's Week 11 game slate. So we'll see how many we get right next week on the show. Let's finish everything up like we always do. And let's see if we can show me the money with this week's lineup. So like I said at the top of the episode, not a great week for the lineup last week. So let's hope this one is a little bit better. At quarterback, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to take advantage of that Cincinnati defense. He is at 5,400, so I got him really, really cheap here against Cincinnati. Running back, I'm going Travion Henderson at 6,300. Jaylen Warren at 6,100. Again, taking advantage of that Cincinnati defense. I think Jaylen Warren is going to get in the end zone this week, and I hope Henderson does as well against that terrible, terrible Jets defense as well. At wide receiver, we're going to return back to that Cincy game. We're going to go T. Higgins because he's cheaper than Jamar Chase, and I just couldn't make it work with Chase. So I'm going to go with the next best thing, T. Higgins for 6,000. And then in the same game, we're going to stack DK Metcalf with Rodgers against that Bengals defense. He is sitting at 5,700. So I'm really tapping into that Cincinnati-Pittsburgh game. My other wide receiver is Jalen Waddle. He's at 6,600. He has been the go-to guy for Tua. He has been incredible this year. So I'm going to ride that train with Waddle for my wide receiver. Tight end, I really paid up here, but not as much as I thought I would have to. Brock Bowers. I think he's the first time I've taken on the show here at 6,000 against the Dallas defense. So I wanted to get some kind of piece of that Dallas game. So I'm going to go really, really roll the dice on the paying up here for Brock Bowers. And then at flex, I'm going to go running back this week. It sounds like J.K. Dobbins could potentially get thrown on the injured reserve. So I'm going to go with R.J. Harvey in that KC game. 5,400. He has been a decent receiver and rusher. So with Dobbins pretty much ruled out for the next couple games, Harvey should be the guy. So I'm going to go with Harvey for 5,400. And then since I did all of that, I basically punted defense. And we're going to go with the Cardinals for 2,500. The Cardinals have been pretty decent this year on defense, so it's not the worst. It's like I'm not going to pick Dallas. I'm not going to pick Cincinnati. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals against a returning Brock Bowers, potentially, a banged-up Brock Bowers. Or Brock Purdy, excuse me. I have Brock Bowers in the brain. Brock Purdy coming back. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals for 2,500. So that is the lineup. That is a $5 lineup. First place in that contest gets $600, and then the payouts after that. So let's see if we can at least double our money for $10, but let's shoot for the sky with $600 in first place with that very, very Bengals and Steelers filled lineup this week for Week 11. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the End Zone Report. Come back next week for our reactions to Week 11 and our preview and predictions for Week 12. Reminder, Week 11 in most leagues, now depending, I know some leagues will wait until Week 13 for their trade deadline, but for those fantasy players out there, remember, Week 11 is the trade deadline in your fantasy league, so throw those trades out and see if you can kind of get ahead of your fantasy playoffs coming up here in a few weeks. Wow, we're already a few weeks until fantasy playoffs, and then pretty soon we're going to be in the NFL playoffs, and we will be still pumping out episodes for the playoffs every week. It's going to be fun. We're going to have some big shows for the playoffs coming up, but we're going to finish out the season strong and return for Week 11 and see what happens. So, reminder, also watch the show every week, youtube.com/the End Zone Report. Also, check out the Spotify channel as well. I also host a movie podcast for all you movie lovers out there, Cinematic Reviews. You can watch it on YouTube as well, youtube.com/the Cinematic Reviews. You can also listen to the audio version on whatever podcast platform you prefer. It's on many, many different platforms out there. We're currently working on getting this podcast on more platforms as well. It's taken a little bit more time than I wanted to, but we will get that out there for you also. So check out both podcasts every week, brought to you by Quantum Podcasts. I will see you all at the end of Week 11. I hope you all win your bets, win your fantasy leagues, and we will see you next time on the End Zone Report.